Today, we'll take a look at how hydroponics works. We see how smoking affects our bodies and find out what makes plants tick. That's on Hot Science.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Hot Science.
Hi, and thanks for joining us.
Now, what do these three things down here all have in common? There's a pair of pliers, a plastic spoon, and also a peg.
Well, I'll make the competition a little bit harder. Some more clues, a pair of forceps, a set of scissors, and some nutcrackers.
Well, all these things are simple machines and they're all levers.
They sure are. And let's have a look at what one of the basic things of a lever is. It's just a plank or a rod, something that can be moved around. The other important part of a lever is what we call the fulcrum. That's the point that the lever moves around.
Let's
imagine, okay, something like a seesaw, which would be a fairly simple sort of lever, where we have the plank. It can move like this, and it's moving about the fulcrum.
And there are two other parts of the lever.
Sure are. One of them, where will I put it here?
Down there, yeah.
Okay, that orange block is a weight, and we'd call that our load.
And down this end is where the work's done or the effort's put in.
So this is a simple lever, fulcrum, load and effort. Let's have a look on some of the examples that Robin had earlier on.
Try out the spoon.
Okay, the spoon and the sugar. If we put the spoon in the sugar, let's see how it becomes a lever. If I put effort at this end, the spoon is able to pivot at the fulcrum there where it's touching the glass, and the load is at the other end. It's a spoonful of sugar.
Now what about the scissors?
Okay.
I've got some paper down here. If we grab a piece of paper and start cutting into it.
Okay, we can see the fulcrum is the pivoting point here in the middle. We've got the effort happening where Robin's fingers are in the handles.
And the load is the paper. Whoa! So they're the three parts of a lever, but just to confuse the issue, there are also three types of levers.
Lever.
There are three types. They're not given very complicated names though. First class, second class and third class. And how they're categorised depends on where the fulcrum, the effort and the load are. So let's have a look at this simple sort, almost a seesaw, with the load at one end and the effort at the other. That is an example of a first class lever.
And the fulcrum in the middle, of course, too.
That's right.
Well, we've got some examples of those. A peg, that's a really good example. We've got the load up this end, the fulcrum in the middle, and the effort down the other end. And also, a pair of pliers is another good example. The load goes in this end, the fulcrum is in the middle, and the effort down here.
Great, Rob. Okay, well, let's have a look at a second class lever. That happens when we've got the fulcrum at one end, the load in the middle this time, and the effort is done up the other end.
And that would be a nutcracker.
Yeah, that's a good example of a second class lever. Another,
Put the nut in there.
yeah, the fulcrum's up here, the nut is there, that's where the load would be, and the effort's done at one end. Another good example, of course, would be a wheelbarrow. The wheel's the fulcrum, load in the middle, and effort's the handles that you lift.
And the third one?
Okay, third class of lever would be with the fulcrum at one end, the load at the other end, and the effort done in the middle.
Like a front-end loader?
That's a good example of a third class lever. And another one could be the arm of a human. You can put something in your hand, the load, the fulcrum can be your elbow, and the effort is done here with your arm muscles.
Well as levers doing work for us, they can also be lots of fun. Have a look at this.
We've made a basketball machine, and we've got a target at one end.
Yep, just up here with a little net. And down this end,
we've got some model basketballs. They're made out of modelling clay. Quite pretty, aren't they?
And also our lever. Very important.
It's a wooden spoon with some elastic bands attached. And yeah, you're right actually, Rob, it is a lever. We can put our basketballs in the middle here on the spoon part. Where I'm holding, I'm doing the effort.
And the fulcrum's down here, so that makes it a second class lever.
Right on. Hey, you ready?
Yep,
One,
okay.
2, 3.
Oh no, my turn. See if I can get it in. Okay. Yes! You'll go.
Okay. See if I can beat that.
Oh, no, you keep trying to do another one.
At At 7:30 every morning, Wayne Holden climbs the 148 steps of the Adelaide GPO clock tower to wind the clock. Wayne and his predecessors have been doing this every day for the past 120 years. The 4 dials of the clock face the 4 cardinal points and were ordered from England last century by South Australia's then Postmaster General, Sir Charles Todd. To keep the clock ticking over, the 3 drums that control the mechanism must be wound by hand. The central drum controls the pendulum, which allows the weight to gradually descend as the minutes tick by. The right-hand drum houses the chimes that sound every quarter hour. And on the hour, the left-hand weights cause the bells to strike after the chimes. In 1955, the main bell hammer had to be replaced after having struck the bell more than 4.5 million times in its 80-year life. Being a pendulum clock, it can sometimes slow down or speed up according to the forces of gravity. As the Earth moves around the Sun and our gravity alters, so the timing is affected. These days, there's an electronic device within the mechanism to keep the clock accurate to within 1 second of Greenwich Mean Time, the international standard against which all time around the globe is calculated. The pendulum is also housed in a dust-proof cupboard to protect it from air currents or pollution. From the centre of the mechanism, shafts go vertically upwards into the next level, where there are gears that alter the hands of the clock faces. The English foundry which cast the 5 bells curiously cast a mistake into the spelling of the words Bell Founders on one of them. The theory was that as nothing is perfect, casting in this fault would mean that the bells would last forever. And it seems that if not forever, the clock will go on for at least another century or so. Coming up next on Hot Science, what makes plants tick?
Crisp, fresh, green veggies. Any gardener would envy this crop. All these plants have been grown without an inch of soil, using hydroponics, a system of horticulture that's becoming more and more popular with both commercial and home gardeners. Well, Richmond, what is hydroponics?
Well, hydroponics is basically starting with an inert substance, a substance that doesn't have any property values whatsoever, then adding a nutrient to water and then putting it through the medium so that the plants are being fed.
So you don't use soil?
There's no soil involved.
And what's a medium?
Oh, there are several types of medium. There is expanded clay,
Which is?
this. There is perlite vermiculite, which is volcanic rock that's been heated to a certain degree and then sterilised.
What does the word hydroponics mean?
Well, hydroponics is a Greek word. Hydro meaning water, and ponics actually comes from the word ponos, meaning working with. So basically working with water.
Is it a new system?
No, the Egyptians actually created it back thousands of years ago by actually stringing bamboo rafts across the Nile River and then placing the plants in between the bamboo.
Do you need light?
Yes, you do need light, whether it be artificial or natural sunlight, as all plants do need light to survive.
So is it more economical to use hydroponics?
It certainly is. In some cases, it can take only half the time to grow some plants. And because the actual systems are up off the ground by about 3 feet, there are no bugs, as in snails and slugs, to attack the plants.
So what's the future of hydroponics?
Well, we're looking into third world countries, countries that don't have great amounts of fresh water, because in hydroponics, it's recycled.
And are there different types of systems?
There certainly are. This is known as a drip system. The way it actually works is it's self-contained. You've got your reservoir through here, in which the pump then pumps up to the feeder tubes and it's fed out to the plants. The nutrient and water then runs back through and back into the bottom and then is recycled again. This is commonly known as an NFT system, which is a nutrient flow technique. The nutrient and water are stored in this reservoir, then pumped out via the feeder heads. This system is commonly used commercially as it doesn't use that much medium to actually grow the plants in. As you can see, with the root system, it forms out through the little pots and then takes up the water and the nutrient as required.
And the final system?
The flood and drain system, which basically has a reservoir situated underneath. It then floods the system for about 15 minutes, feeding the plant's root system, and then via a timer it cuts the pump out and the nutrient then sinks away back into the reservoir. It's dragging oxygen down to the root system, which is always healthy for plants.
Photosynthesis.
Oh, it must be dinner time. I photosynthesise.
You do, don't you, Ooze?
Yeah, because that's the process where plants get their food from the sun.
And that would account for your green colour. It's the reason why leaves on trees and plants are green too.
Yeah.
Because it's the chlorophyll, which is a green pigment, which can actually absorb the light's energy, sunlight's energy, and combine that with carbon dioxide and water to make sugars.
Yeah.
And the byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen. So, Ooze, without you photosynthesising, Sue and I wouldn't be able to live.
That's right. Hey, I'll give off some oxygen now.
Okay. Oh.
Thanks for
Do you like
that,
that?
Ooze.
I might need a breath mint, but it's still oxygen.
Most plants wouldn't be able to do that. But because you're able to use sunlight and create simple sugars, you're actually the bottom of the food chain as well.
I don't like the idea of that, Sue.
Well, it means that other animals are able to eat plants and get their energy from you.
Watch out, Ooze, I'm hungry.
Okay, well, I've got a very simple experiment which has to do with photosynthesis, and in this experiment we're going to collect the gases that are produced. Okay, so Ooze, what I have is some duckweed.
Oh, hello, duck.
No.
Oh, sorry.
It's a weed that you find in ponds, so I'll drop a little bit in there.
Yeah.
I'll just drain some of that off, and we'll have a look at the rest of the equipment. There's a bowl with some 3 blocks in the bottom of it. I've got a beaker, but a glass jar would do just as well. And the blocks are there so that I can put the jar on top and it's not touching the bottom, okay? So let's get, oops, just slipped. Let's get some of this duckweed. How's your duckweed going there, Ooze?
Oh, not too bad. It's floating around
Floating
here
on
at the
top?
moment.
Okay, so I'll put
Try
some
to
of
eat
that.
some.
Put some of that duckweed in there, and then I'm going to add some water so that it covers the bottom of the jar. Now what we have is a jar which is sealed airtight. There's air trapped in it, but it's also sealed from the air all around us. And what we do is we leave this in a nice sunny spot so that the duckweed can photosynthesise, and as it does that it produces oxygen which will collect in the jar. And in about a week we'd be able to take the lid off that jar and do an oxygen test.
So you wouldn't be able to see it?
You wouldn't be able to see the oxygen, but one way of finding out if oxygen is present is to have a match that you've lit, blow it out, and while it's still quite hot, hold it up in the bottom of the jar and it should just flicker or catch a light again. So I've got to go and put this somewhere nice and sunny where it won't get bumped by people like Ooze. So I might go and put it in a corner window of the lab.
Okay, Sue, take care of that duckweed.
Well, while Sue does that, Ooze, let's check out another type of plant, but this one is ticklish.
This is the experiment in the green machine that we call the ticklish plant. The reason we call it the ticklish plant is because it's based on a mimosa plant. And a mimosa, related to our acacias, they're in the same family, but this particular one comes from Brazil. The reason it's called a sensitive plant is when you touch it, its leaves fold down. And this happens very quickly. The reason for the leaves folding down is that the plant is able to detect the touch and turn it into an electrical impulse. And that electrical impulse causes water to be pumped out of a little swelling at the base of each leaf, a bit like a tight little water bag, but when the water leaves it, it becomes very flaccid and collapses. It's fascinating to watch because it can work right across a whole plant. There are a number of ideas as to why this happens, but there's no really proven reason for it. Possibilities are it's a protective mechanism by the plant to stop it from being eaten by insects or by grazing animals. The plant originates in the tropical areas of Brazil, and so there may be something in that area which we don't have in Australia. And by the way, that's one reason why we have to be very careful with this plant in Australia, because there is a risk of it growing out of control because it's not a native Australian plant. So we have to keep it under laboratory conditions and take a great deal of care with it. Other forms of plant communication include plants releasing gases. For example, this type of plant communication is just internal, but some plants are able to communicate with plants many metres away by releasing gases. Other forms of plant communications are usually based on hormones which control their growth. And so this is an interesting form in that it's an electrical type of communication, and it's a very rapid form of communication within the plant.
Only about 10% of a mature pine tree is living tissue.
I hope you've got time for this puzzle. You can't tell much from the close-up, so I'll give you a clue. Before this instrument was invented, the sun was used to do its work. Did you guess it in time? Well, here it is. It's a clock. The first clocks invented had no dials or hands, but told the time by ringing a bell.
The flower of many colours opens its doorway to the bee. As the bee sucks the nectar, it is powdered by pollen in which it cannot see. When it flies to the next flower, which will open its doorway too, this is the reproduction process of a flower, which cannot be seen by me or you.
If you're smart, you won't take up smoking. But to find out what goes on scientifically in your body when you do smoke, we've got an expert with us, Dr. Lynn Roberts from the Quit campaign. Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
Now, Lynn, first of all, can you tell us what sort of chemicals are in a cigarette?
Well, there's a lot of chemicals. There's over 4,000 chemicals in cigarette
Wow.
smoke. Yes, people are very surprised by that.
Are there, what sort of things would there be?
Well, there's things like hydrogen cyanide, insecticides, yeah, a whole lot of
Paint
really
strippers and
nasty
those sorts
things.
of
Yes,
things? Really?
nasty toxic batch.
And then there are the three that we sort of hear about a lot.
Yes, the three that we're very concerned about is tar, and that's really the sort of brown, gunky stuff that really has the cancer-causing substances in it. And then there's carbon monoxide, and your body prefers to carry that than oxygen around. And then there's nicotine, and that's the thing that really is the addictive component of cigarettes, and it's the one that makes you want that next cigarette.
Keep having another one.
Yes.
And what happens in your body when you do smoke?
Well, there's some fairly nasty things, of course, happen. I mean, there's a number of diseases associated with smoking. There's things like lung cancer, emphysema, heart disease, even things like peripheral vascular disease, which results perhaps in having to have your leg amputated.
Oh, it's pretty serious then.
Yes, it is very serious.
Okay, and we've got some equipment here for doing different things. Perhaps we could start with this one. What does this do, Lynn?
Well, what we've actually got here is a little machine that actually can measure the amount of tar in a cigarette. So that you would put a lit cigarette in this end here, and then you would draw back very slowly on this syringe.
So the air gets drawn back.
That's true. And in here, we've actually got a little filter that actually will collect the level of tar in a cigarette.
Right.
Okay, and we've actually got one here. If I can just show you. Can you see how brown that is? And that's just from one cigarette in
Right,
terms
that's the
of...
tar
That's
that would
the
normally
tar.
go in your
That's the
lungs.
tar that's coming through and collecting on that filter.
Okay, so that's pretty ghastly.
Yes.
Well, Lynn, what about this piece of equipment? I can see a dial. It's reading
Well,
zero.
this actually measures carbon monoxide, and we could actually show that your carbon monoxide level will probably be about normal, and then we could compare it with a smoker.
Oh, terrific.
So
Okay.
if you'd like to pick that up.
Yep.
Okay, and take a big
blow
deep
it.
breath in and blow. Keep going. That's right. That's right. That's fine. That's good.
Stop.
Yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
Hey, look, it hasn't really moved. It's still on zero.
That's right. And yet, if that was a smoker, we would actually see, and we've done a comparison with a smoker, you'll see that it actually goes right up, and you'll get a reading, say, from 16, 20 or 30 parts per million, and that just demonstrates the level of carbon monoxide that's in the blood.
Okay, well, we have tested this out with a smoker, so let's have a look at... Okay, there we have it. So it's reading 17, and you can see the green has lit up. So
Yes.
that person has got carbon monoxide.
They've got 17 parts per million of carbon monoxide
in their
floating
blood,
around
and
in
that
their
would
blood.
normally be oxygen.
That's
so
right, that's
it's
right.
not very
And your
healthy.
level, of course, was zero, so that was normal.
Okay, now I don't smoke, but I'm what's called a passive smoker. I might be around somebody who does smoke. What are the effects on my body?
Well, we're really concerned about people that are in a passive smoking environment where they're there for long periods of time. So if you were in a workplace and people were smoking around you all the time, every day, we'd be concerned.
Right.
And you can get things like lung cancer, asthma, if you're an asthmatic, heart disease. So there's a whole range of diseases that are associated with passive
Because a lot
smoking
of
too.
you do breathe in a lot of the smoke. You can feel it, you know, in
Yes,
your lungs.
yes,
and
that's
what
right.
about? I mean, if you've been smoking for 40 years, I imagine all of this damage builds up and builds up. But what are your chances of recovery if you do stop?
Well, we encourage everybody to stop, even if they have been smoking for a long period of time, and your body will do what it can to recover. But of course, if you're a younger person, you've only been smoking for a few years, you've got a much better chance of your body fully recovering.
Right. So
If
the
you-
outlook's good.
Yes.
The sooner you stop,
That's right.
the sooner you're going to recover. Or the better your chances are. Well, thank you very much, Lynn, for telling us about smoking.
Thank you.
It's quiz time.
Great, okay. First question is, what do you call it when you grow plants without soil?
I know that one. Hydroponics.
That's
Yeah.
fun. Well,
Okay.
Ooze,
Yeah.
if you're being so smart, I've got another question for you.
Okay.
What do plants use chlorophyll for?
Ah, throw 'em right at me. I know all of these. It's photosynthesis.
Which you do.
Yeah. Hey, you girls all right for oxygen? Hey.
Okay. Oh,
Rob, you okay?
very oozy breath.
Yuck.
Okay, well, I've got a question for you two. What sort of machine or tool is a pair of scissors?
Now that is a lever, but Sue, can you tell me which one?
Oh, okay. Well, it's got the fulcrum here in the middle.
Yeah.
The effort at one end.
Yeah.
And the load would occur at the other, so that would make it a first-class lever.
Yeah.
Well, talking of levers, did you see our catapult we made before?
Oh, yeah, I did. You weren't very good, though. I thought you would have got more in than that. I mean, if it was me, I
practicing
would have.
now.
Well, can we try again?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's see
Here
if I
we
can get
go.
a few more in than Rob this time.
I'll cheer you both on, okay?
Okay, this is something that you can try for yourself. Just put a target at one end and the lever with the wooden spoon at the other, and a few modelling clay balls, and let's see what happens.
And off we go.
Okay, hang on.
And...
haven't got the first one in. Hold on.
Yay!
Oh, 1-1.
This is exciting!
Oh, Rob, you
Try
missed.
another one.
It's a one-all draw.
Just quickly.
We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.